Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are having a fantastic day. So today's upload is going to be, as you can tell by the title, my preliminary fall outlook 2020. So this marks a milestone, if you will, because this always happens each year for the past, I think this is the fourth year that I'm doing this. Hold on, one, two, three. Fifth year. I apologize. The first year I didn't really make a Fallout look, but it's, I guess you could say, the fourth year I'm making a Fallout look, and the time has come to make one. Did it a little bit early this year, as last year I kind of made it later, but the time has definitely come. And fall is not that far away. I know summer hasn't even started yet, but it's the next season, so it's not too ridiculous to talk about it. And hopefully you guys could also consider subscribing to this channel. Hopefully you guys could all like the video. I do all sorts of weather related content. I will be making winter outlooks, winter forecasts, and all that fun stuff, so consider doing so. Subscribing, and if you're already a fan, consider liking the video, as that really helps out the video. So if you like what you're seeing, consider liking the video. So let's start off by looking at the ENSO outlook. This is the ENSO stands for El Nino Southern Oscillation, and the ENSO plays a very big role in the North American weather, and it's probably the ENSO, which I'll show you what it is, plays the biggest role. I think plays the biggest role in North America. It doesn't play as big of a role anywhere else. Australia may be significant as well, but North America really just get impacted by the ENSO. So this is a very good factor to start off with. And you can see this was updated 14th of May, so not awfully long ago. They update this every second Thursday of the month. So it's a one per month update, really. And you can see that ENSO neutral is most likely to continue through the Northern Hemisphere summer 2020, with increasing chances of La Nina throughout the rest of the year. So this will basically be the neutral, as you can see by these bars, which is the gray color, kind of a neutral color. And you can see that it's decreasing throughout many of these years. April, May, June, July, June, July, August, September. And you can see that the La Nina is rising and the El Nino is falling or staying steady. And this is where things get interesting, because for the winter, we will most likely be seeing a La Nina at this point, it seems. But at this point, there's a lot of change yet to potentially come. So the neutral, look at the fall. It's this time frame we're looking at. For anywhere from here to here. This is like basically that fall time frame. You can see that they're all darn close. It'll probably start off as a neutral, and if the La Nina is vicious enough, if it's vigorous enough, I should rather say, then it may be a La Nina towards the end of the fall. However, if it's a neutral, or if the neutral stays, or if the La Nina isn't as vigorous and the water temperature stay cooler, or warmer, then it will be neutral. So at this point, it's really tough to say. I'm leaning towards a scenario where it starts off as a neutral and ends up as a La Nina. So you have to understand that really puts forecasters or weather enthusiasts, whatever you may call us, it puts us at a tough situation, because we can't simply just look at, say what do previous La Nina years bring, as this will probably be a transition between a La Nina or a neutral into a La Nina. So this is definitely something that is a little bit out of the ordinary, and definitely provides a challenge. But if you like the weather, you're always up for a good challenge. So let's take a look at another model, the CPC. Sorry, not the CPC, the CFS. But actually, first I want to show you the previous ENSO years and what they were. So let's take a brief example. You can see that this is the fall months right here. 2008, it was from a neutral to a La Nina, which we are witnessing possibly this year. And if you were to look at the 2008-2009 fall into winter, it was relatively chilly and snowy. So that gives us we could go back to these years and gather some of that information just based off looking at similar years to this year, and assume, what may happen. While this is flawed, it's not, because there's many other factors that play in. If everything gets kind of overshown by the ENSO, sometimes there are several years that does happen, where the ENSO is the biggest factor. Then you could really, be you could really make a good forecast based on looking at analogs. So another winter I would like to show is 2010, 2011. You could see it was just an all La Nina or another fall, and the fall was also pretty. I think it was pretty warm for this year. So again, it's not consistent. This is why it makes this forecasting tough. You can see this 2013, 2014, this was a neutral. While it was close to La Nina, it was a neutral, and the fall was very chilly, so was the summer. So it's, it's a bit complicated, but I decided to, kind of compile it into one and show you the maps, which I will do in a minute. But first I want to show you this CFS, CFS models, and you can see that majority, or sorry, these are just the model outlooks. The CFS is in a minute. You can see that the majority of them are showing a neutral throughout the fall, and very few are showing a La Nina, which is below this 0.5 line. Sorry about that. Right here, and then here is the El Nino. So not many are showing El Nino or La Nina. It's probably towards the bottom half, so probably a negative neutral, but it's neutral nevertheless. So a neutral is a neutral, not a La Nina. So that's what the models outlooks are from the 3.4 SST model outlook, the sea surface temperatures. And if we were to look at the CFS version 2 forecast, you can see that we have, this is what has been occurring this past year. You can see this was an up and down. We've been staying in a neutral for a while. You can see we got close to an El Nino this year, but we never really got into that stage. And then we see this crashing down. And these are the models that are probably the most, I guess, aggressive towards a La Nina. As you can see that this is where the La Nina line stands, and you can see that this is July, August, September. So this would still be from a neutral to a La Nina type event, but it really just shows a pretty strong La Nina by the time things are over, almost a one La Nina by the time November is here. And then into winter, it really also shows a La Nina. So this is pretty darn aggressive. I wouldn't say this is really, right, but I may not be right myself. So based on things I've been seeing, this is one of the outliers. You can see this is what the predicted temperatures are across the ocean. In case you're wondering what the ENSO is, it's basically this region off of the Peruvian western coast of South America, and you can see that La Nina is when the temperatures are cooler, and if this was El Nino, then that's when the temperatures would be warmer, and a neutral is kind of at neither. It's not really warm or cool, which is what we are in right now. So let's continue looking at this. Now we go into the fun part. That's what I like to always say. These are the analogs, which is basically comparing previous winters, previous events, previous falls, whatever it may be, to the upcoming events, to upcoming fall or winter based on a similar feature they're sharing. And all these years, you can see September to December, which is September 1st through December 1st, which is basically all the fall, meteorologically. We have a bunch of random years, and they're not actually that random. These are all La Nina years. They all had in common of having a cooler waters off the South American coast. So I do apologize. This is actually neutral years. Got that confused. All these years had in common were having neutral waters off the coast. And you can see that what that led to was a very cool period, a very cool fall across much of the eastern and northern U.S. and warmer across the southwest. Now, this by itself shows us a pretty good indicator that it could be a cool fall, but combined with other things, this may not be as accurate. It would be flawed to just go off of my fall forecast off of just one event like this. So we're gonna start off as a neutral, and whether or not we're gonna see a quick transition is a little bit questionable into the La Nina. And based on events we've been seeing in the past couple of years, we've had troubles coming down from a status into a different status. So from like an El Nino to a La Nina, or from a La Nina to the El Nino, it usually stays a little bit longer of that event than forecasted. So I think that most of the fall will be a neutral, which maybe would give us a cooler fall. But the thing is, look at these stark differences. September to December of La Nina years, I mean, it's completely different. You can see that it's warm across almost 100% of the country. There's a lack of cold air, and things are just not looking good for cold weather, which just leaves us with complete stark differences. We go from cold and warm to just absolutely warm. And I said cold and warm because I was referring to this cold blob and this warm blob, which are the temperature anomalies. And so that gives forecasters a very tough time. I would also like to look at the surface precipitation rate, which basically shows us, you can see right there, millimeters per day, and that composites whatever time period you select and compares it to an average. So these are neutral years and neutral ENSO, and you can see that there's plenty of years right there, and those are the same years I showed you with the neutral neutral falls, but in terms of temperatures. Now this is precipitation. You can see it's pretty dry across much of the U.S. A little bit above across the Great Lakes and maybe Montana, the Northwest, but the coastal Northwest stays below, and much of the United States. So it could be a warm or a dry fall, rather, if it would be neutral years. That's what they're indicating here, which again is an indicator by itself, but isn't an awful one, isn't an awfully great one, as there isn't really as much, the ENSO doesn't have as much of an impact on fall as it does on winter months. So that's also something we have to keep in mind. These are the La Nina years, and you can see it's also below average. So, I guess chances are that the fall would be below average if it's a La Nina or a neutral, but yet again, temperatures, usually the ENSO region has the biggest impact on the United States with temperatures, and that's for the winter months. And when you're talking about fall months, that's already a push, and then talking about precipitation rates is even bigger push. So, this is just kind of a little quick thing I wanted to show you, and I'm not really going to be taking away anything from this. But maybe just drier towards the southern U.S., as that's where it seems to be concentrated. But otherwise, it's a fair chance of just being above, or it's an equal chance of being above or below average. Now let's look at I wanted to show you of the La Nina years, November, because I earlier showed you the La Nina winters and or falls, how warm they were. This is in November of a La Nina year. You can see that the cold has started to make a comeback, and the warmth is starting to push back to the north. In this case, kind of stayed up to the north, which indicates that a La Nina winter, which usually is chilly across the northern U.S., would be taking more shape. And again, maybe just because a La Nina winter is cold doesn't mean a La Nina fall would be cold. And again, we also have to keep in mind that the impacts aren't that great on a La Nina fall as they are in the La Nina winter. There's definitely still impacts though. I would also like to look at a 3-month outlook by the Climate Prediction Center. You can see that it's valid from September, October, November, so just those 3 months that we're talking about. You can see they have 100% of the country above average, which isn't I guess atypical for the Climate Prediction Center to do. They tend to overestimate, if you will, some of these warmer temperatures, especially this from such a far distance. But really, it's a safe bet, as we've been seeing warmer temperatures dominate the past 20 years of this past 20 years of the United States climatological history. And with it being this far out, I mean, there's basically no reasonable claim they can make. Maybe a little bit more centered towards the southern U.S. and a bit less centered towards the northern, and I would agree with that. Especially if that neutral were to take hold, we could see cooler temperatures towards the north. This is my map. I do apologize about the little discolorations right here, but this is my temperature outlook and how I think the temperatures will play out this fall. I think that if there's going to be cold, if there's going to be any cold at all this fall, it's going to stay to the north in the northern plains, and there's not going to be a lot of it. As you can see, there's much more warm colors across California, the southwest, into the southern plains, into the southeast, and up to the northeast. I think there will be more warmth, and I would not be surprised if this expands further to the north. That being said, if things go a little bit differently, we could be looking at, maybe a colder fall with this expanding a little bit. But if I was a gambling man, I would bet my odds that that the warmth would be more expansive on this map, rather, if you were to looking back on this past fall, that the warmth would be more expansive than the cold. And this is my final forecast outlook, or fall outlook. So I do apologize about some of these lines are a bit blurry, but hopefully you could get a good idea of what's to come. Hopefully you could read those words. So let's start off from the west and work our way east. So at the northwest, we wet and cool, and that makes sense because usually a La Nina winter has a wet and cool impact on the northwest anyways, and by November the winter impacts start taking hold. So I think it's going to stay wet and cool, especially with some indications that the jet streams are going to be really pushing precipitation into that area. If you were to look at the Southwest, I think hot and dry across the fall. It stays hot across the Southwest. It doesn't really cool down like it does across the North, and I think it'll be above average this year as well. For the southern U.S. right here, the southern central U.S. I think that it will be dry, and not necessarily as hot, but dry. And if you that's basically I took that away from the La Nina and the and neutral ENSO years, which I was showing you. The precipitation rates, and they were below average. I think that we could be looking at a similar event. Though, again, a little bit counterintuitive here, I do have active tropics across the southeast. So, if the tropics, I think that this is not really my forecast that there will be active tropics. I'm just saying that there's an increased chance of the tropics being active this year. And it looks as if it will be above average season. So I would not be surprised if you could see some, maybe a hurricane, tropical, more storms, or just more rainfall from this. And again, if this weren't to form, then I think this dry would stay here. But if there was more active tropical season, then we could see some of this dry area get a little bit eaten away. Moving to the north, we have cold shots. I think there could be some cold shots like we've been having this summer. If you recall, if you recall, I mean, if you're witnessing right now the weather, if you're looking at it, we go from cooler waves to warm waves. It's not really a consistent heat wave or a consistent cold. It's been kind of a back and forth. The beginning of June was very warm. Now we're in a cooler phase, and then after that tropical storm Cristobal comes through, which is expected coming next week, we'll have another massive cool off. So I think that might continue throughout the fall months. This may be a bit overdone, but again, I'm not confident in this forecast, especially being this far out, but this is my best bet at this point. I think also severe weather will be an issue, as the cold shots and the hot dry air may be leading to some sort of a collision. Also, let's keep in mind that tropical storms are gonna really, in the Gulf Coast is just gonna be really active for moisture pickup, if you will. So the severe weather, I think, will be exploding across parts of the central part of the country. Well, maybe a little bit more west oriented or east oriented. It's tough to tell at this point. And let's look at the northeast. I have warm, which I think it will be dominated by just some warmer temperatures. And whether or not that will change, possibly, possibly not. At this point, this is my best bet. Notice I have these areas in the gray across Wyoming, Colorado, Utah. That's basically a unknown. I mean, it could go either way. Wet, cool, cold shots, hot, dry, kind of like the in-between, the battle zone. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this forecast. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you got a little better glance at what may be coming. And I'll catch you all guys on the next episode. See ya.